impossible to not get to heaven if you just what? He says, chapter 3, hold fast to this confidence or the expectation of your hope. Hang on. Don't let go, because will Christ let go? No. You know, so it's guaranteed in that aspect. So that takes us to verse 28. Look, is this the one you're talking about? All right. The law appoints men as high priests who are weak. But the word of the oath, that was where God said in Psalms 110, I'm going to promise to appoint my son as a high priest forever. That was the promise according to the order of Melchizedek. That was the oath. And God being sovereign, you know he can't lie. Jesus is exalted and he is your and my high priest forever. That's what that oath is. Now, how were men weak? We already know that. First, what? They're fallible. They have to offer sacrifice, first of all, for their own sins. Did they always live a perfect life, these priests? You know, you think about religious leaders today, we're always reading about in the news something, and it's so tragic for the name of Christ. Whether these are real Christians or not, they're claiming to be Christians. When they fall into immorality or there's abuse of children, what does that do to the name of Christ when you see leaders in the church doing that? It's so sad. Well, they're weak. But about Jesus, he's made perfect. That word's complete. He's the perfect high priest, and he's that way how long? Forever. So that's how it ends. Does that help? All right. You were worried about the oath part? Yeah. Because God can't lie. So we get rid of that. Why the Old Covenant? We want to review that again, because it's going to come up here in chapter 8. And Exodus, remember we read in chapter 25, where God prescribed or commanded that Moses make this tabernacle after the pattern which was shown for him on the mountain. Remember we looked at this. Chapter 8 now, where we're going to look, he says, these things, all these patterns, the dimensions of the tabernacle, all the furniture, the veil, all of them, what are they? They're a copy and a shadow of what? Heavenly things. So, we often talk about, here we are, living on the earth, and everything on this earth is a shadow of what? The real thing. And where is the real thing? In the heavenlies, above the ark, right? The word heavenly means the heavenly realm, the spiritual. So here they have this temple, and it was like a rectangle, and that's my best rendering of it right now. It's a picture of something real there, because what's real? The shadow or the thing that casts the shadow? These are just figures or copies. The real thing exists up here. All right? And now, that's what he's going to argue in chapter 8, and he's going to go into in more detail in verse 9. And he said, well, are you sure he's talking about the tabernacle? Well, he quotes in chapter 8 what Moses was told in Exodus 25 when he was instructed by God that you make everything according to the pattern shown on the mountain. Everything that happened in the Old Testament is a physical picture of the spiritual reality that we enjoy. Right? And that's what we're going to try to see. Now, this requires something. That's a change in the law. If you're going to have a change in the high priest, what do you have to have? And why is that? And? All right, I think I heard everything there. Jesus could not be a high priest because he was of the wrong tribe, because the tribe of the law was silent about being a priest from the tribe of Judah. It prescribed the tribe of Levi. But God swore with an oath that he's going to seed his son forever. So he's going to get Jesus to be a high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. What do he have to do with the law? He has to get rid of it. Now, can he just arbitrarily get rid of it? All right, we're going to look at why it was done away with to make room for the new law. All right? But notice how it starts in chapter 8 and verse 1. And we can read up there, but I want you to open your Bible so you can be familiar with it on the page. And I know you can mark your Bible apps on your phone, but there's something about opening the Bible, writing in the margins, highlighting, and it's always there when you go back and look at it. I know you can do that in some apps, but just get comfortable with opening your Bible. Verse 1. Now the main point in which we have said is this: we have such a high priest who has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of majesty in heaven. He's at the high place forever, right? In the holy place. Now, do you remember in chapter 1, how did it open? The whole premise of the book. God spoke in the past through many ways and diverse portions and manners. That's the old King James. But in these last days, he's spoken to us through his Son. Then he says, let's talk about the Son. He's the exact radiance of God's nature. He's created all things. And then what he said, after he made purification for sins, it says he sat down at the right hand of God. He's going back to that thought. That's where Jesus is now. JC?
I don't know if I'm just making something out of nothing, but is it also any pertinence that he's speaking of Jesus being next to God, as opposed to like all the images my brain can recollect in Old Testament is talking about people going to Abraham's bosom, or people, they never talk about in the Old Testament about you dying and being next to God.
Right. And I think it's important because he's created a new way within the veil. And the veil is his body now. There's a new way to get into the presence of God, because really the central question is this: how can you and I approach God? And remember, we've already looked at Psalms 2 because he's dealt with that, or Psalms 22. Who is man, Psalms 8, excuse me, that you would even take thought of us? And so how are you going to approach God when you understand how far lower you are than him? Well, the answer is nobody can approach him. Forget about it. We're just worried about escaping his wrath. Then Jesus comes along. And where is he entered as our high priest? Within the veil, sitting now at the right hand of God. And we're going to see in chapter 8, he's our mediator. Now what's a mediator? A go-between. What's he doing? He has God's ear on one side, and he has our ear on the other side. And what's he doing for us all the time? Pleading our case. So because of Jesus, we can approach God himself. That's unheard of in the Jewish, under the Jewish law. You don't approach God. You don't go in the holy place. Only the high priest does. Now we all can approach him. Yeah, I hope that helps. It is significant that he's there. It's important. Yes?
It was always God's plan that Jesus would do that. It wasn't that if the Jews,
Right.
the Jews were the vehicle to allow Jesus to be on earth to make that sacrifice.
That's right.
This was not all an afterthought. It was all planned.
That's right, because when you look at the Jewish nation, you had Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and out of that came the nation of Israel. They are a physical nation, but guess what? That's a shadow. Everything in the Old Testament is a shadow of our reality. Now, God tabernacled among them, didn't he? What do I mean, tabernacled among them? Well, because he told them, says, Moses, build this tabernacle. It's a tent house. It's really what it was. Pitched by who? God or man? Man. And then separated from the holy place, the most holy, put the Ark Covenant, and that's where my presence will be. And that's where God is tabernacling or dwelling among his people. And it was a magnificent thing. They could say, who has a God that lives among us? But it was very precarious, wasn't it? Because if we have a sinful people, but God's going to choose to dwell with them. Every year they had to make this sacrifice of atonement. Did it forgive sins? It just kind of rolled them ahead, if you would. But God still lived among them. Now, so here we have Israel as a nation of God. Jesus comes to fulfill everything God's promised, as you're saying. Now in the church, what are we? God's holy nation. And does God tabernacle among us? He says, come ye out from among them, and I will be your God, and you shall be my people, and I will dwell among you. God lives with us, and we live with him spiritually. It's the most beautiful thing. So yes, physical picture of our spirituality. All right? Yes?
Well, that's why John, 1 John talks about the continuous cleansing.
Yes.
That cleansing only happens once a year. We can get it continually because he's always
His blood. Yes, good.
always there. So he's in the Holy of Holies as a shadow. But how do we get to be a priest, to be in the holy place, to be able to have that connection? Well, that's, 1 Peter talks about that we become a royal priesthood. So as we priests serve the high priest
That's right. It's a beautiful picture, isn't it? Yeah. Let's read chapter 8 then, and then we'll make some points. So verse 2. He's a minister in the sanctuary, in the true tabernacle, which the Lord pitched, not man. So is this a heavenly tabernacle? Now, this dwelling would probably be the church, because we are the new Israel, and he dwells among us. The church is his body. It's his holy temple. It's said in Ephesians chapter 2. Verse 3, for every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and sacrifices every year continually. Hence, it's necessary that this high priest also have something to offer. What did Jesus offer? We know himself. Now, verse 4, if he were on the earth, he wouldn't be a priest at all. We know why, right? Tell me real quick. What? Wrong tribe. Just can't do it, right? Since these are the ones who offer the gifts according to the law prescribed Levites, not people from Judah. But verse 5, who serve, though, a copy and a shadow of the heavenly things, just as Moses was warned by God when he was about to erect the tabernacle. For see, he says, you make it according to the pattern which was shown you on the mountain. Physical, right? But it's a physical picture, this tabernacle, of the spiritual one that we enjoy. Verse 6, but now he's obtained a more excellent ministry, by as much he's also the mediator of a better covenant, which has been enacted on better promises. So verse 7 through 12 is going to deal with the new covenant. And this section, if you see in your Bible, it's in small caps. The Numeric Standard, the publisher puts it in small caps. What does that tell you? If you see a text in small caps, it's a quotation from the Old Testament. And so I don't think you can see it, but this whole column from verse 8 all the way through verse 12 is one long quotation. Now, how often in the New Testament do you get a passage out of the Old Testament that is quoted this long? Not very often. So what does that tell you right away? This is important. Wake up and take notice. That's what it's saying. Go back and find where this is, highlight it. It's one of those seminal passages that just is just a foundation for what God is doing. Now, this passage is Jeremiah 31. We're going to go back and look at it. Okay? But now, before we read it, let's just go through. We have a better high priest. He sits there at the throne of God. That makes him better. We have a better sanctuary. Why? You already know the answer. Why? I'm sorry? He died, but why is our sanctuary better? Our temple,
it's not earthly. It's eternal.
First of all, it's the real one. It's the true one. These are what? Shadows. Okay, maybe you don't get it. All right. Who's your favorite basketball player? Just pick someone, I don't care. LeBron James. I don't care what you think of him. So LeBron James is standing here, and all the kids, I want his autograph, man. But he's standing there, and these lights, they're casting a shadow. You can sort of see a shadow. And we're going, look, it's LeBron. And like, oh, LeBron, can I have your autograph? And people are like, what are you doing? That's just what? It's not the real thing. He's what? Behind you. Get off the ground and serve the real thing. What were the Jews doing all these years? The shadow. A copy. Where's the real thing that's casting a reflection? It's heaven, it's Jesus, the high priest, and we as his church. We're the real thing. So he's trying to tell these Hebrews, or Christians, don't go back to the shadow. We have a better sanctuary. It's the real one. Now, we want physical things, don't we? We like physical buildings. We like priests wrapped in nice robes so they look religious. Turn their collar around backwards, and they have nice titles so it all sounds religious. They're all physical pictures, and at the best, they're just shadows of the real thing. At worst, they're all apostate. But we're so physically minded. Hebrews is this beautiful book. It's trying to elevate us, get our eyes off this earth and think spiritually. You know, I'll go back to Olin. What's the only way you can make sense of his death and find peace? What's the only way?
God took him home.
He's in glory. Everything he's labored for, physical in this world, all the struggles, but everything he labored for was what? Spiritual. And now he has his reward. Is it worth it? Would he want to come back at this moment? Except for his family. Would he want to come back? No way. That's what we want to see. So chapter 12 says, when talking about running the race, Hebrews 12, he says, it's going to be tough, but fix your eyes on Jesus. Get your eyes off the earth and the shadows. Look at the real thing. And that's our job. That's when I struggle, is I get my eyes off him, I start looking at stuff. Yes?
Could you, I don't know if it's the right time to elaborate more. Jesus could not physically be a priest after the Mosaical order because he's the wrong tribe.
Right.
And so it says he's a priest after the order of Melchizedek.
Right.
Can you describe what that order?
Oh, you missed that class. It's online. I couldn't. But he was the high priest of the Old Testament in Genesis 15. No, my mind's gone blank. Is it 15? But where after Abraham rescued Lot, he gave tithes, but he blessed him as well. But yeah, you have to look at it.
Would one connection be that Melchizedek was not a Jewish priest? He was a priest of God to all people.
Well, he was a priest he was of Jerusalem, king of Salem. He was a king and a priest at the same time.
And he was, but I'm saying he wasn't Jewish.
That's right. That's right. There were no Jews at that time. Yeah, no, you have to look at that. We spent a whole class on that. Yeah. All right. Again, the tabernacle and temple on earth are not the original. Again, they're what? Copies. My son used to trade or buy and sell Rolex watches. And they're worth a lot. Every year they go up in price. And anything you got something of value, what do people do with them? They counterfeit them. And only a good eye can tell the difference, because some of the counterfeits are so good. I don't care if Coach bags or Nike shoes, everyone counterfeits everything. They even counterfeit iPhones. And then it's broken, and they turn it in to get a new one, and Apple loses millions of dollars on that scam. Now, why do I say that? Anything on this earth is not the real thing. It's a copy. Where's the original? We have a better sanctuary. Notice Revelation 1. He opened his mouth in this blasphemy against God. That's the harlot there. To blaspheme his name and his tabernacle. That is those who dwell on the earth. It's the people. It's just his church. That's his heavenly tabernacle. Notice that he's a better offering because he offered himself. We already talked about that. Then notice there's a problem now. Because if he's on the earth, this is a matter of law. He couldn't serve as a high priest at all. So we've already talked about this. And so they serve the shadow, and we want to serve the real thing. And it's a pattern of what really the real thing looks like. So it's interesting. And next week, Sam will do some of that. Every piece of furniture, every room, everything in the temple is a copy or a shadow of something we enjoy spiritually. Every detail. Well, for example, the altar of sacrifice. What is that a picture of spiritually? Jesus' offering. All right, how about a laver of washing? That should be easy. It's baptism. All right, everything. Now, is that a coincidence? That something that was instituted hundreds of years ago kind of matches up perfectly with everything we do and enjoy? Coincidence? No, it's God's design because they're copies of the real thing. All right? And so even the high priest was a picture of what Jesus is going to be. Again, they're not the originals. Originals are what we enjoy in heaven. So let's talk about this better covenant. Now we have to define some words. This idea of a mediator is important. In Galatians, he says, why do we have a mediator at all? Well, the Old Testament, it was transferred to Israel at Mount Sinai. Remember that? Can anyone tell me what text we were in when we look at that? Oh, very good. Exodus 19:24. All right? The people gathered before the mountain. God spoke the 10 Commandments, right? People are scared of dying. So it said, Moses, you go up there and talk to him. We can't handle this. So Moses is up there for 40 days, right? And so here it says, God revealed the old law, and I'm reading Galatians 3 now, by the agents of a mediator. Who was the go-between between God and man? In that case, Moses. And we already saw in chapter 3, who's superior? Moses or Jesus? Well, Jesus, because Moses was in the house of Israel. It says Jesus built the house. So who's superior? Right? Who's up there before he became a son? Right there with God. He's not known as the Son until he is born on the earth. What's he known before as? He's God. He's the Word. He's, doing all this with the Father. So he's superior, all right? But it takes a mediator, a go-between man and God because of man's sinfulness and God's glory. Now, a mediator is someone that pleads your case. It's someone that will talk on your behalf. And we mentioned last week, a lawyer is a paraclete. It's a different word, but it's similar. They plead your case. But a lawyer might lose a case and win a case. How many cases have Jesus ever lost? 0. When he's pleading the case, you always win. Will he always win on your behalf? Well, of course. And so there's where he has a better name because we have a better ministry because he's a mediator of a better covenant. This one was mediated by Moses. Our covenant is mediated by who? Jesus. So God gave a second law or covenant. Now we're going to have to define that word, covenant. All right? So let's do that. Because he's a mediator of a new covenant. Now, this word covenant, it can mean last will and testament. What does that mean? When you die, I've already defined, and it's irrevocable, it's supposed to be, what happens to all my assets, correct? But it also means a contract. It's when opposing nations, kings would get together and they come up with some alliance or peace treaty. So it was a covenant. And they would bind themselves in this contract. And usually there's an oath that you'd swear that this would happen to the person that breaks it. It's usually a terrible consequence. It's death. Right? The word in the Hebrew is beret, and it can mean a treaty or alliance or a constitution. When you think of constitution, do we have one? It's the foundation of our country. It's what holds us together. When God had a covenant with Israel, he gave it to them. It's called the Old Law, 613 commandments. And it was read to them. And the people said, all that the Lord has said, we will do. Remember that? They said that 3 times. They were sprinkled with blood. The book of the covenant was sprinkled with blood. And God entered into this covenant. It's a marriage. Now, we understand covenant in marriage because there's a sign of our covenant. Now, does that covenant say, I will be faithful to you as long as you're faithful to me? Is that what a covenant means? We live in a society today where people think, I will keep my promise to you as long as you do your part, but as soon as you don't, I'm out of here. No. An honorable person does what? I will do what is right no matter what you do. Correct? A covenant's binding. Now, it's impossible for God to lie. So once he swore that they would be his Israel, this is an eternal covenant. But it was conditional. What was the condition? God's going to keep his part, but what? They're going to keep their part. So where's the problem going to be? You already know. Not with God. It's going to be with man. All right? So, that's what this word means. Now, mediator, again, is a go-between. It's someone in the middle. So I'm having a fight with, Mike Clampy. And we just can't get something settled, maybe business. And I say, Bruce, can you be our go-between? Because Bruce likes me, and Bruce likes Mike, and Mike likes Bruce. So he's a go-between. He mediates, right? And you come to a conclusion. That's what a mediator is, right? Moses mediated here. Remember they all sinned? Who pleaded their case? God was going to destroy them when they were worshiping the golden calf. They broke the covenant right out of the bat. He said, please, God. Please. And God changed his mind, didn't he? Because of who? Moses. Jesus do the same thing? He's on the cross. What did he say? Forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And I'll take care of it. I'll pay for it from my own blood. He's a mediator, a go-between, a perfect one. Because he lives there right beside God. He always has God's ear. That's an intercessor when he pleads the case to a person in authority. And he's also our mediator. Now that's what it says. There's one God, 1 Timothy says, and one mediator between God and man, the man Christ Jesus, who gave himself as a ransom for all, the testimony born at the proper time. That's his whole purpose and job. And he lives to make intercession for you now. So we'll look at this. Let's look at this new covenant. And this is an hour class from this point forward. But I have 14 minutes to do it in. So I want you to turn to Jeremiah 31. And you might say this is kind of deep involved. It really is not. But it's so important we understand what's going on here so we can really understand what Christ has done for us and the covenant we have with God. He's bound himself to us, and God can't lie. It's irrevocable. So verse 31 of Jeremiah 31. Behold, days are coming, declares Jehovah. Now the Hebrew writer's quoting this, speaking about Christianity. Those are the days, right? He's talking about us as well. He says, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel, with the house of Judah. Now again, the implication, if you have a new covenant, what does that demand? The old covenant has to go away. All right? David? I'm sorry? Is it okay now?
No.
Oh, well, you probably need to change the battery. I'm powerless to do anything about it. Is that good?
Need a battery mediator.
A battery mediator. Oh, it's probably because it's off. How about, is that better?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Verse 32. He said, it's not like the old covenant, which I made with their fathers, and today I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. Where was that one? Where was it? Mount Sinai, right here. Exodus 19. It's not like that one. My covenant which they broke. Now, if you look at what he says here in Hebrews, when he talks about this first covenant was taken out of the way because he found fault. Remember to see that right there? He found fault. That's why he had to get a second. What was the fault of the first covenant? God's word was perfect, holy, and good. What was the fault? He tells us in the next verse, he says, for they did not continue in my covenant. What was the fault? The people, their unbelief and disobedience. He already said in chapter 3 of Hebrews, I swore they would not enter into my rest. Why? Remember that?
Disbelief.
Because of their unbelief and disobedience. They wanted to kill Joshua and Caleb. Go back to slavery. God said, that's it. I'm done with you. You've tested me these 10 times. And that's why they broke it. Now that's what Jeremiah says is going to happen. It's not like the old one which they broke. Although, what does he say at the end, verse 32? It's very pretty here. Although I was a husband to them, declares Jehovah. Verse 33, this is a covenant which I will make with the house of Israel after those days. And the Hebrew writer says, it's you and me, the church. We are the true Israel. Israel of that day, physical Israel, was a copy of the real one. That's you and I, Christians. All right? This is the covenant which I will make with the Israel in those days. I will put my law within them, and on their heart I will write it. And I will be their God, and they shall be my people. That's the idea of tabernacling. They shall not teach again each man his neighbor and each man his brother, saying, know the Lord, for they all know me. From the least of them to the greatest of them, declares Jehovah. For I will forgive their iniquity, and their sin I will remember no more. All right. When we look at this, I hope that all these words are in your head, because I'm just going to refer to them because in the time we have. This law was written on what?
Stone.
2 tablets of stone, right? The 10 representing the whole law. Even though there's 613, the 10 represent all of them. You comfortable with that? And he says the new is going to be written where? Hearts. What's that all about? All right. So in Israel, to be a Jew, what's the only requirement? You had to be born of the lineage of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, who had 12 sons. You had to be born of one of those 12 sons. And you're born, and you're a little baby. You can't even talk. And what are you? God's part of his holy nation, his people. He's your father, and he dwells among you. What did you do to obtain such a privilege as that? You were born. That's it. So there is some arrogance that would settle in. Now, did they know God at this point? Did they know the law? And so the problem with Israel, as the days went on, we're God's chosen people. And God's with us, the temple, the tabernacle. That's proof, right? But did they know God's law? Did it abide within them? No. But they said, the temple's proof that he's with us, and they really forgot about the law, and they forgot about God, because in the law, it says in Deuteronomy 8, this is the great commandment, what? Love God with your heart. See, the law should have been integrated into your heart, and it never was. They forgot God. They didn't know who he was. They didn't know what great sacrifices and power he used to deliver them out of Egyptian captivity. And they stand it on their own bloodline. We're special because we're Jews, and that's all that matters. Someone had their hand up. Yeah. They're doing some cleanup work and restoration. They find the law. And when Josiah has it ready, he weeps. Because they realize they're not doing any of it. All right. So the law was of no value to them. They weren't keeping it. But I want you to know, this second part, he says, no longer will they teach the people, know God. Because he says, everyone in the new covenant is going to know me. And he's going to explain why. So we have to understand that first part where he says, they're not going to say, come to know God. And that's right here. They will not no longer say, know the Lord. Now, the problem is the Jews lived wicked lives, but stood on the fact they were Jews, that they were okay with God just because they had the bloodline. Hosea says there's no knowledge of God in the land. None. No one knows me. Do they know the law? Yeah, they could quote some of it. But did they know God? No. There's a difference between knowing Scripture and knowing God. And they could get by just the fact they had the blood of Abraham in their body, the DNA. And God says, that did not work. They didn't keep the law. They broke that covenant. Now I'm going to get a new one. It's going to be written where? Now here's the difference. The only way you can be part of the new covenant, it's similar not eerily, but it's by God's design. You got to be born again. Isn't that what Jesus said to Nicodemus? You got to be born again. Ezekiel said God's going to give you a new heart. But here's how you're born again. We already asked the question, who's man that God would even look at him when you consider how great he is? Isaiah 65 says the same thing. He said, the heavens are my throne, the earth is my footstool. Where's a house you could build for me? The answer is what? Nowhere. But then he says, to this one, God says, I'll look. You know what he says? Does anyone remember? The one that's contrite or humble in spirit and trembles at my word. That word contrite means broken. Broken. The only one that can come to God now is the one that's poor in spirit. There's no pride left in them. There's no self-righteous. They realize, God, I fall so far short of who you are. I deserve your wrath. I'm in trouble. And I come to you broken. There's no pride left in me at all. I can't do this. God says, that's the guy I can work with. That's the guy I can look at and have a relationship with. Because that person's going to tremble, and everything I say, what? They're going to do it gladly. And he says, they're going to know me. How? Because I will what? What does he promise? Do you remember what it said in Jeremiah? What does it say right here? They will all know me. At least the greatest four, that's an explanation. How will they know God?
Forgive their iniquity.
The only person that appreciates forgiveness is a broken person and realizes how much danger they're in. And when they fall before God and God says, I forgive you. It's like you never, ever did it. I will remember them no more. When you taste such grace, and you realize Jesus purchased it by his own death, that humbles you even farther. And you become so grateful. You've tasted of God's personal character, his grace and his love, and you can't ever be the same again. That person says, you want me to wash my sins away? Yes, I'll be baptized. Do you want me to faithfully follow Jesus till I... Yes, I'll do that. Why? Because this is now written where? In their heart. There's too many Christians, it's still just in their head, and it's not in their heart. They're just doing like the Jews did, serving him on the outside, just enough to get by, claiming, well, we're doing the right things. That doesn't cut it. The only persons that are true Christians that have been broken, and they come to God and say, save me, and he saves them, and they're so grateful. That's why they sing and glorify him. That's why they pray to him. That's why they're glad to follow him. Do they have struggles? Yes, but they have a high priest that runs to their aid anytime they cry. That's what it means to know God. You don't know something about him. You know him as a husband knows his wife and a wife knows her husband. Does that make sense? Now, which would you rather have? One written on stone, just a bunch of rules, and you're trying to conform? Conforming's hard. Would you like this type of relationship where it's a marriage, it's personal, it's intimate? He forgives and he empowers and you gratefully serve him. That's what he wants. He wants children. He wants a bride for Christ. We have a better covenant, don't we? And what's built into it, every time you sin, what happens? Brad already talked about it. We have continual what? Forgiveness. He's continually forgiving us. There's no way you cannot get to heaven. Why? He's taking care of it. All right. That was our class in 14 minutes. If we don't understand the new covenant, we miss really what Christianity is all about. It's so personal and it's so profound. It's not about rules. It's not about regulations. It's not about conforming. It's about transforming from the inside. Being born again and being a new creation. All right. Any questions or comments? I hope you go away with two things. Realizing how great our God is, what a great gift he is, and how I need to humble myself before him. And then how assured I know I'm going to heaven. Because I have a great high priest, Jesus Christ. All right. Thank you.